Hey there, everyone. Ted Lacksonen, the country thinker here, bringing you another episode of The Eagle Has Crashed. Today we will wrap up March of 2030, and then next week we will have the next Eaglenomics episode, the third of 4 of these interim chapters. But I guess we might as well not do any more chit-chatting here. Let's just go ahead and get right into the story. Herm Stanbaugh sat on his front porch, looking through infrared goggles. The farmer saw the orange glow of a large SUV rolling to a stop along his cow pasture. 3 men got out and hopped over his electric fence. They walked up to 3 cows grazing in the late March evening. The animals nervously backed away from the approaching men, and Stanbaugh reached for his rifle. One of the men pulled a large pistol from his coat, and an orange flash showed him shooting one of the cows in the head. The quietness indicated a silencer. Stanbaugh took off his goggles and put his eye to the infrared-sensitive scope on his .223 rifle. Crack! The man with the pistol fell down, and the other 2 began looking around in surprise. The fallen man sat up and reached up his arm. Crack! The sitting man fell backward. Stanbaugh continued to look through the scope and followed as the other men dashed for the electric fence along the road. They sprang over, using the posts like gymnasts. They bolted into the SUV and roared off down the gravel road. Damn, Stanbaugh said. I don't need any more beef right now. The old man sat stone-faced and emotionless. Guilt, remorse, and responsibility were locked safely away in his subconscious. He was under attack. Folks was out to get him. Hoods from the city was out to get him, like these guys. The government was out to get him, like those ag agents. Folks was out to get him. They made me do it. I didn't have any choice. They threatened me. I had to defend myself. They made me do it. Lucy Davis thumped down the unfinished wooden steps of her home and saw Kevin kneeling on the concrete basement floor. He was stapling pieces of construction paper to dozens of 4-foot-long wood 1x4s. Raise taxes now. Pay cuts are a crime. Government workers are people too. You almost done? Lucy asked. Kevin looked up with a start, and Lucy put her hand over her mouth and giggled. He patted the military-style camouflage paint on his cheek. You like it? He said with a smile. This is war, man, war. He popped to his feet and began weaving and bobbing like a boxer, jabbing at the air. You know, a real fight. Yeah, it is, and I'm glad you can go since I gotta work. They're going after your paycheck, Luce, and that's something we can't afford right now. He stabbed at the air with a fist. We're gonna blast 'em hard. You're right that we can't afford a pay cut, but I can't afford you landing yourself in jail either. Don't you go getting in any trouble, Kevin Davis, she said, shaking her head. There's going to be a lot of people downtown, both with us and against us. Yeah, I know, he answered. A devilish smile grew on his face. And me and some of the boys came up with a plan to make the people against us look bad. Real bad. Lucy scowled. I said I don't want you getting into trouble. What have you fools thought up? Damien, Zach, and a couple of others going to join up with the anti-government jerks, and they're going to start some shit. Oh, don't you dare, Kevin, Lucy said. Listen, Luce, this is war. They're trying to destroy our way of life. All's fair in love and war. We gotta win no matter what it takes. That's all we're doing. We're fighting for the good guys. What you're doing is wrong, and it's dangerous. The other folks got a right to their opinion. Yeah, but they're wrong. I know, but they're allowed to be. Not when they destroy the lives of others, they don't. He bent down, picked up a dozen signs, and rested them on his shoulder. This is war, Luce. President Maynard looked up from his desk when Chief of Staff Corelli entered. What is it, Tony? More secession. The president closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. Southern states? No. Idaho, Montana, Utah, and Wyoming. 4 more? Yeah, they're calling themselves the Rocky Mountain Republic. The president rubbed his forehead. What's their beef? Pretty much the same as New England and Texas, except they've added a complaint about monetary policy. Monetary policy? Yeah, they say our loose monetary policies have destabilized our economy, and they believe the Department of Currency is monetizing our debt and inflation is getting out of control. Pirelli held out his hands. Basically saying they want out before things get worse. But things are going to get better, not worse. I know, but they think otherwise. Well, how did it play out? They pretty much followed New England's example. They blocked all roads in, closed down airports, quarantined military bases, and closed down the rest of our federal offices. So we still have some military on the ground. Yeah, but they threatened to destroy any military equipment that moves off the bases. Do you believe them? I think they would try. But they would fail. Yeah, but it would get messy. That's what got the UN folks worried. Are they asking to come down to Belize? Yeah, and the Secretary General has granted their request. The president sighed. This is getting really complicated, Tony. Yeah, it is, boss. Maynard shook his head. We'd have to fight 3 civil wars at once, with a military that's a lot smaller than it used to be, and right when we don't have the revenue for it. Yeah, and with the rest of the world tanking, there's no one to borrow from. But worse, our enemies seem willing to supply the rebels with arms. At least the Rocky Mountain states won't be as hard to monitor, the president said. Let's hope. We're getting spread pretty thin out there. Maynard scowled. You know, Tony, I'm really pissed off at our intelligence right now. I ordered the CIA to spy on all the state governments, and this still happened. Congressional Republicans are going to have me for lunch for letting this happen on my watch. I'll bust their heads if I hear a peep out of them, Pirelli said. The president nodded. Be as aggressive as you need to keep their mouths shut. Let them know we'll paint them as un-American troublemakers if they blame the White House for what is clearly a breakdown in the intelligence community. Pirelli slammed a fist into an open hand. With pleasure, boss. In the meantime, bring me anybody in the intelligence community who should have been on top of this. Let them know that I'm going to give them a dressing down, big time. Let them know their careers and reputations are at stake, and the country wants to know how the hell they let this happen. Pirelli grinned. I'll let them know that this is all their damn fault and Americans blame them personally. Exactly, Tony. And let's keep an eye on the polls. If Americans start blaming me for this, I'll have to hang the intelligence folks out to dry. I need public confidence now more than ever. You will have it, boss. Good. Welcome back to the American Now Network, everyone. I'm Mindy LeClaire, and I'm in Columbus, Ohio, on a drizzly early spring day. A large group of government workers are here protesting potential pay cut that Governor Brady Coleman proposed yesterday. Republicans, who control the state Senate, have refused to approve tax increases to help with the fiscal troubles of the Buckeye State, saying it would be unfair to ask Ohioans to pay more when many people are struggling in these difficult economic times. So Governor Coleman has proposed a large number of budget cuts, including cutting government worker pay. As a sign of solidarity with the government workers' unions, other unions, like the Teamsters, United Auto Workers, and International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, have descended on Columbus in great numbers. But protesters in opposition to the unions are just a block away. In speaking to this group, they agree with Senate Republicans that tax hikes would be unfair. One protester told me that government and teachers unions need to, quote, suck it up like everybody else. The two groups of protesters are starting to get closer, and there's a lot of shouting going on between them. Police are trying hard to keep the protesters separated by positioning squad cars between them, but I don't think they expect this kind of turnout. There are at least 10,000 people on either side. The shouting is beginning to intensify, but thankfully, several more squad cars have arrived and positioned themselves between the pro and anti-union protesters. Wait a minute. Oh my God. Someone just threw a brick at the union protesters. And now another. And a third. People from both sides are starting to climb onto the squad cars. The officers are flaying with their batons, but it doesn't seem to be stopping the groups from coming together. The first protesters have reached one another, and they're hacking at each other, using their signs like clubs. An officer just fired tear gas, but protesters swarmed him under. They're attacking the officers and kicking in the windows of the police cars. The protesters are tackling one another, hitting and kicking each other. I'm seeing a lot of blood. Oh my God, this is terrible. And that concludes March of 2030 of The Eagle Has Crashed. Now I want to make a side note here. When I wrote that last section portraying a big union versus anti-union violent event in Columbus, Ohio, I wrote that before the Greek debt crisis exploded and before the goings-on in Madison and to a lesser extent Columbus itself. When I described the scene to a brother of mine who was helping me work through some ideas, he thought I was crazy. He thought that I was pushing it too far. He no longer feels that way. And I do want to say this. I do not want anything of that sort to take place in Ohio or anywhere in the United States. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book, is try and raise awareness and get everybody to be calm in the event that things really do break down in a substantial way. We'll see whether or not The Eagle Has Crashed has that impact. Anyhow, if you are liking the book and would like to get it, you can get it at clearpeakpress.com. You can get it in both paperback and electronic version from Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And you can get it as an ebook from Smashwords, the Sony Store, iTunes Store, and other retailers. Have a great weekend, and we'll get back together next week.